Morning, good afternoon. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar organized by Entity Data and Fortinet. My name is Stefan Hendricks. I'll be your host today. I'm the Senior VP for Cybersecurity at Entity Data, and I'm joined by my two guests. Christian Koch, could you maybe introduce yourself?
Yes, happy to do this. My name is Christian Koch, based in Munich in Germany. I'm a Senior VP for IoT OT Business Development Innovations, and I'm also heading the global OT capability for Entity Data.
Welcome, Christian. And I'm also joined by Daniele Mancini from Fortinet. Daniele, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Stefan. So my name is Daniele Mancini. I'm one of the field CISOs in MEA. So I work multiple businesses across MEA, following mainly strategic topic about operational technology, cybersecurity and cyber defense.
Thank you, Daniele, and welcome to this
Thank you.
webinar organized by Fortinet and Entity Data. So to kick things off, let's go to a first poll. We tried to make this as interactive as possible. So if we could bring up the first poll question, please, and I will go through the question. So hopefully you can see the poll question here. So this is about the state of the IT/OT security landscape, right? And so the question is as follows: based on past cybersecurity incidents, would you consider your organization or supply chain resilient to cyber attacks to cyber physical systems, or CPS as we call it? So you've got 5 choices, all the way from minimal across limited to improving to pretty good, basically, to very high maturity, right? So that's the question that should be on the screen now. And we'll give it 30 seconds to answer that. In the meantime, Daniele, how do you see the state of the OT security landscape? Are things improving or are they getting worse? What's your take?
It's changing, I would say, Stefan, because it's so we conduct periodic research as a Fortinet. So in recently we have published a couple of reports about that. So what we see actually is that we recorded an increase in terms of the number of succeeded attacks towards the organization. So we are talking about 30% year over year. And also what is interesting is that those attacks, every mature organization is recording 6 plus attacks, successful attacks. And this is strange. So we see more mature organization attacked more frequently, and the attack vectors are always the same, so phishing and ransomware, but we see an increase in terms of compromised legal mailboxes, so basically. And this represents a really tough vector attacks in terms of detection for security response and security operations team. And another interesting thing that we are recording through in our research is that we see an increase on both of the spectrum of the maturity level. So we see organizations that started with low maturity, so segmentation mainly, increasing, but we see also organizations that already moved into the proactive cyber defense, increasing by introducing deception techniques, advanced EDR, network EDR, this kind of capabilities. So the spectrum is quite interesting, but we see indeed an important shift.
Thank you, Daniele. Grazie. Can we have the results of the first poll question, please? Okay, thank you. So this is quite interesting, right? So we see a fairly even distribution across the whole range of maturity range, if you want, right? So a bit of a spike in the middle where people are saying our cyber resilience is improving. But what is interesting is that there's still a lot of work, right? Clearly. I mean, 10% of resilience is minimal and 24 has limited resilience capabilities. Like I said, the biggest part of the respondents say that they're somewhere in the middle. It's improving, but we're not there yet. And then another 38% says that we're beyond that and we're actually starting to get into maturity. Only 19% states that they have mature cyber resilience with proactive risk management and continuous monitoring. So, Christian, how would you react to that? Is that what you expected? Is it better or is it worse than what you would have thought, being, an expert, of course, in this domain?
Yeah. To be honest, I think that it exactly matches to the experience that we see in the overall market. When I have a comparison between the situation that we had maybe 4 or 5 years ago, then I would say most of the companies did not start any OT security program at all. Right now, there's a lot of pressure from regulatory requirements on the one hand side. On the other hand, when you talk to customers, then normally each and every customer knows a partner company, a supplier, whatever that were affected by an attack. And so I would say the understanding how bad an OT security attack could be is a pretty high level. And so everybody normally thinks about what can we do to be better. Yeah, and this exactly I think is the result from the survey that we say, okay, when we really talk about what can we do, then many people started with it, but many are not in a level where they should be, but the direction is the right one.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. So, Daniele, I think Fortinet published the OT Security Report, 2024 report, with lots of findings. Is the poll aligning with what you see in the report? Would you say, yeah, that's a confirmation of what we already kind of knew?
I think it does. It does because it's in line also what we see because we analyze usually the threat landscape in line with the MITRE attack patterns, and I think it's more or less in line because what we see definite acceleration in the reconnaissance phase, and somehow this is reflecting this data. Because just to tell you, just to give you roughly a measure, so if you compare the data of we record in the first quarter are already doubling the entire reconnaissance actions performed in 2024. So it means that we see more activities. So organizations are reacting more, and consequently they are trying to improve their resiliency capability because now the problem is really on the ground. So and I see this survey I see on the screen is more or less reflecting this increase in activity and so shift of responding from the organizations.
Thank you, Daniele. So what we're seeing in the landscape is, on one hand, people trying to cope with the increased complexity of the attacks that we're seeing in the OT security space, and also an increased volume that we've seen since a couple of years due to the geopolitics, right? Among other factors. There's also the dark side that is getting increasingly creative with phishing and with very advanced ransomware attacks. How do you see those attacks evolving specifically in the OT security space, Christian?
I would say all these types of attacks are more targeted right now. I think in the past, it could be that you were hit by a ransomware by accident, but right now it's more targeted attacks. And the reason why the OT environments are hit by these attacks is in most of the cases because it is so easy to attack these environments. Just give you an example when you talk about phishing. Yeah, when you just think about how a typical plant operation works, then you have all the operators and they do a 24/7 operation. And during nighttime, it's pretty boring. Yeah, you sit there, what do you do? And all the typical connects to the internet world are blocked from the OT side. And so the easiest thing is you put an USB stick in with an LTE or 5G link. Yeah, and this is a typical thing where all the typical operators do not have in mind that this could be used for an attack. Yeah, and then they read their private emails and they do typical things that they want to do in your free time. And the attacker knows this. Yeah, and this is the main entry point for a typical phishing campaign. So that also the attackers knows that it is much easier to find a way around the full secure perimeter of a company, that you more focus on these weak connects and on the supplier connects as well. Because this is also a typical attack that we see for ransomware, especially that suppliers or remote maintenance links are the entry point to infect these environments.
So they would go for the weakest part of the chain, right? Pretty
Exactly.
much.
Exactly.
Okay. So supply chains, for example, is definitely something of an attention point. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. So Daniele, it's not that our for example, European government, because this is hosted from Europe, of course, this webinar hasn't been sitting on the fence doing nothing, right? There's this directive called NIS2, which is very important and is being transposed now into country law. Some countries, like I happen to know, Belgium has already transposed it into local law, and others will follow suit this year and next year. So how does NIS2 affect OT security specifically? Are we seeing increased budgets, increased tendency and interest from the OT security people to accelerate their investments driven by NIS2, Daniele? Are you seeing that from the Fortinet side?
So I work across EMEA. So I'm work mainly in critical infrastructure. I think the perspective is definitely different. So there's a huge sensibility, large investment, and they are moving more in advanced stage, I would say, in that sense. And the NIS2 is definitely helping. So so one of the challenges they are facing, I would say, is that every country is developing his own let's say, variation of the NIS2. So for example, Germany is accelerating on detection capability, Belgium more on the monitoring. So everyone is somehow creating his own, version of the NIS2,
Okay.
starting from
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah.
And in general, what I see finally organizations shifting also their approach in quantifying the impact, which means that that I see the rise finally of specific risk assessment, methodologies. We are not reusing something from IT, but we are using like the cyber hazard methodology, which is coming from the operation and brought into the cyber operational technology to have continuous assessment and quantifying the impacts by zones. For example, we have also the cyber process analysis, which also address basically detects the threats that are impacting specific processes. So I see this shift, and this is helping definitely in driving the investment. It's opening also another area, which is innovation. So traditionally, OT has always been behind in innovation for a good reason. I'm not saying is a problem, but because the main reason is availability. What I see is now I see more the industries and critical infrastructure and manufacturing, energies company moving into this concept of incubating. So incubating cybersecurity capability. So make a study to look forward in the future on a small subset and then scale up. And this is the kind of behavior has been triggered by the NIS2, for example.
And maybe a related question for Christian. You're based in Germany, right? So we have Industry 4.0. We've got the BSI urging the government to do more about critical infrastructure, etc. So how is NIS2 and OT security evolving in Europe's biggest economy? What's your take?
I think NIS2 and Germany, that's an interesting topic. Of course,
That's why I'm asking the question.
the main issue that we have in Germany is that it is postponed and postponed and postponed. And this is a typical topic where a lot of companies get a bit tired of. Because what does a company need? They need a clear way. What should we do? When should we do this? And this is, my understanding, the biggest issue that we have with NIS2 in Germany as well as in other countries. And what Daniele mentioned, I think this is the also pretty interesting challenge that the customers are facing, that there is no NIS2 that is valid in the same way in each and every country. And so the companies have to set up the basic stuff, right? Like the typical risk management, and they have to implement all the controls. And so I think this is clear. But when you really talk about what should I focus on in detail, this is different, and this is the challenge. And the other challenge is that you have to fulfill the regulatory requirement regarding the processes where you have to inform the agencies, the regulator, in case something happens. And then you have to do this in the worst case multiple times, because you have a site in France and in Belgium and in Germany and all the other countries. And this is a complex topic. And this is also a topic where the customers really struggle with. And when we compare the situation that we have in Germany, then we have the same situation in a lot of other countries. Because when you have a look to the NIS2 map, where you can see which country really fulfills the requirements based on the local laws, then I think there are only 5, 6 countries that finished everything, and all the others are still in process of internal negotiation. And that's a critical thing for this, to my understanding.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting the German specifics. Given your large industrial base and being the biggest economy, I think that's a very important thing for people to understand, especially people working for multinational or global companies that are on this call today, actually. And we're just getting a question from an attendee here. That's the great thing about our live webinar, of course. I think a very interesting question. The question goes as follows: how is NIS2 shaping identity management in manufacturing sites? Is the trend to use completely separate infrastructure from IT, or just adding a new domain in the current infrastructure? So this is an IAM angle into OT security, which is, I find, particularly interesting. Daniele, what's your take? What's Fortinet's take on this one?
So there are two variables. The first one, it depends from the sector, because there are sector-specific control subset for authenticating. The big challenge that everyone has is that they have to structure their identity access management in order to manage people, assets, and process and authentication of processes. And because that goes into the zoning concept and then shift into the subnetting, nano subnetting, and zero trust network access control, basically. And in general, what we see is that for OT specific areas, it's developed their own identity access management, but just because the needs are different. So the processes can be the same, but the needs are totally different. So we see generally two parallel infrastructure, and it makes easier in reporting incident, because we know we have to respond to Cyclone according to the NIS2, and when we move into forensic post-mortem analysis, it is important to track back all this information, and you need to have these dedicated areas for OT.
Yeah, I see Christian nodding. We also have a large IAM practice at NTT, of course. Christian, would you concur with Daniela's statement?
Yes, I would, and I also want to add a couple of other topics. I think when you talk about identity management in OT, then in many cases it does not really exist in current environments. I think this is a topic that has to be fixed. I think that's key, that you have identities in place. On the other hand, you have a lot of technical challenges when you talk about identity management, and I just want to give an example. When you talk about all the old Windows systems that you have in OT, then you need backward compatibility. And this is also the reason why we recommend in the current stage not to connect the OT systems to your IT Active Directory, for example. Because in IT, you want to be up to date. You want to disable all this legacy stuff in your Active Directory. But in OT, right now, you need this. And I think the future will be a bit better, also because of the Cyber Resilience Act and machinery regulation and so on, because the vendors are a bit more forced to keep everything up to date. But right now, we have a different situation. This is based on this a clear statement. It's very important. You have to set it up, but do it in a way that it works for the environment based on the legacy requirements that you have.
Thank you. Very clear guidance there from Christian. Right, let's have our second poll question, which is about organizations' challenges. Could we put that on the screen, please, Saket?
It is on, Stefan. People have answered.
Oh, okay, I don't see it. Okay, great. All right. So this is the second question, and we would love your input. So the question is, what is the organization's biggest challenge in managing IT and OT security today? Is it lack of visibility? Is it siloed teams? Is it increasing sophistication of threats, regulatory compliance pressures, or limited budget or resources? And I think people can indicate multiple answers, Saket? Or is it one pick only?
These are single choices.
Single choice. Okay, single choice. Here we go. Right. So while we are waiting for the results to appear, let's talk a bit about convergence. Right. Convergence is a big theme in general in cybersecurity, and it is one of Fortinet's focal points as well. With IT and OT converging, of course, in the next couple of years. Now, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You already hinted at that a bit, Christian, when you said, do not unify your identity management systems into one, because you might run into some serious issues. So how real is convergence? Are we really seeing, of course, the air gap that used to exist, between OT and IT has been cut, right? Most people I talk to, they no longer have that air gap. They are connected for all the right reasons. You want to connect your OT environment to get data into the IT environment to do things like workforce planning, like preventive maintenance, etc. There's plenty of use cases. But is that convergence going to accelerate, or will it kind of stay where it is now? Christian, what's your take on that one?
I would split the answer into two parts. From an innovation perspective in custom environments, there must be an acceleration of bringing these environments together. Of course, there are so many use cases that companies need to accelerate their processes, to optimize processes, to be efficient, to use modern technology, like all these AI stuff that is popping up everywhere. And when you, for example, want to do your quality check of your products with AI, then you need to have access to your IT environment. That's a mandatory requirement. So, and based on this, you have to put it together. You have to bring it together. On the other hand, you have these two worlds, the IT world and the OT world. And when I have a look to our projects, then in many cases, we are the translator between IT and OT. Because the one guy say, these guys are the enemies. The other says they do not understand what we really need. And then you have an internal fight. And clear advice from our side is, if you want to be successful, bring the teams together, find a common wording, and work on how to collaborate. Then you can be successful. But this is the first topic, and it's independent from all the technical things that you have. But just speaking about and understanding why is it so important that the operation is up and running, and why do we have different requirements from an IT perspective, this is the key thing. And if this is solved, then I think the projects can be definitely accelerated.
Daniele, would you concur, or do you have a different angle?
No, I definitely agree with what Christian said, so, talking with the different customers and CISOs, there are two common areas that come up beside the technology. Is one that is the IT team SOC, let's say, is focused mainly on effectiveness, because they want to, they deep dive, they want to eradicate quickly the threats. While in the OT space, there's the culture of effectiveness. So availability is the main key. So we need to keep running the operation. And what I see the teams are, the CISOs are merging those two teams and try to merge these two, cultural approach. And this is the direction that's been taken for many organizations, because it's important also that in case of emergency, especially now where the attack vectors runs in parallel due to AI and other factors, it's important that the teams they can join forces to respond quickly to the cyber threats. So as Christian said, it's important to bring together these two cultures and make this big change.
Excellent. In the meantime, we have received the results for our second poll question. Saket, could you bring those on the screen, please? If that's possible.
The answers are published. Let me reshare.
I'm not seeing them on my screen. Okay, while you fix that, in the meantime, there's a... Okay, let's just continue then. Okay. There they are. Okay, now they're appearing. Okay. Technology always works, but it might just take a while sometimes. The answers are a bit mixed if we look at this, Christian and Daniele. So 30% says lack of visibility across environments. And about 60%, 30% says that. The other 70% has slightly different opinions. So siloed teams and tools would be the biggest challenge for organization. Increased sophistication of threats is a bit less preeminent, and then regulatory pressure is also smaller and limited budget. So apparently the biggest challenges seem to be lack of visibility and siloed teams and tools. About the siloing, you already talked a bit, Christian. OT and IT not always working together in a perfect harmony, I would say. But lack of visibility we haven't touched yet. So Daniele, Fortinet has this thing called Fabric, right? So could you elaborate a bit on that and how improve
Yes,
visibility?
it's a topic we have remarked also in our latest OT Cybersecurity Report 2024. So we see what we call degrees in reporting. So in general, we are recording degrees in reporting. There are multiple root codes, I have to say, but I think the main is that what we see in terms of attack vectors, we see more and more often that legit OT devices, IoT or ICS, are weaponized. So which makes because of the not the same level of maturity, it makes it difficult to detect this kind of attacks and also lateral movement. So I think part of the lack of visibility is related to that. And in terms of the fabric, is how we are supporting the organization is with two main concepts. One is orchestration, the other one is automation. And this is because it's important now due to the landscape of the OT to bring orchestration and automation to generate quick report, more advanced capabilities in terms of analysis of the compromised systems. So in general, it's what we are doing to support the organization is to introducing these two capabilities, which also underpins another important concept, which is AI into cybersecurity. But I'm pretty sure we will come up during the meeting, the discussion. So, but that's the main reason.
Okay, thank you, Daniele. So let's switch gears a bit and let's talk about proactive security strategies, right? So historically, we've been fairly reactive in cybersecurity and in OT security specifically. I think it's fair to say we're seeing a shift towards proactive behavior. People are starting to leverage AI, leverage advanced analytics. Zero trust is also starting to pop up in zero trust conversations. And then there's also the notion of a security operating center that is also extending its reach into OT security, right? So let's talk a bit about those three themes, starting maybe with zero trust, right? So it's a buzzword that we hear a lot. Are you seeing zero trust as an important element in OT security planning and strategy? Christian, maybe go first.
When we talk about zero trust and OT, I would also split the answer up into two parts. When you have a look to the legacy world, I would say 95% of all the companies are far away from zero trust. Everything was implemented in a very traditional way, and also the vendors that install the OT systems do not have security and especially zero trust in mind. They set everything up in a way that they did 10 years ago as well. And so I think this is one of the main challenges that we see. When we talk about new factories, and when we also talk about a real cybersecurity strategy, then zero trust should definitely be a big part of this strategy. But there's a but from my side, because when you compare the understanding of zero trust in IT and in OT, then in OT it will always be a bit different because you do not have these identities in details, because you have a lot of machine-to-machine communication. Then you have also a lack of capabilities also for modern systems where you say, okay, the protocols, for example, that were used for the communication, these are fixed. You cannot change this from scratch to some new modern thing. It will take some time. And so I would definitely recommend customers should have this in mind. They should focus on zero trust, especially for the external connects. They say, okay, when you connect from internal to external, that you use all these authenticated secure links to cloud services, also to external services. Also the other way around, for example, when you say, okay, we have some remote maintenance connects, you should also use these zero trust approaches that everybody only gets access to the system that they really need. Then you add all these additional features on it. This should be the way to go. Yeah, but it's a bit different to IT.
Yeah, I would agree. Daniele, from a Fortinet perspective, zero trust is a very important part of your Fortinet portfolio, of course, ZTA, zero trust architectures. How does that specifically apply to OT security, i.e., how does Fortinet typically implement a zero trust architecture in a mixed IT/OT environment?
Yes, indeed, it's part of our strategic portfolio, and for that reason, we have a dedicated area in our strategy dedicated to OT. So basically, whatever we implement into the IT world in terms of zero trust has been somehow customized to run around OT, and this is also because we have customized this concept thanks to the huge cooperation and interaction we have with critical infrastructure. So we have a dedicated somehow fabric for that. So and this is something we keep developing. So for example, we have also technology like SASE that are traditionally in IT environment dedicated to OT. So just to give you an example of how
everything starts with Fortinet, yeah. So
exactly, this is just to give you an example of how we really invest as one of our core capabilities in our strategic portfolio.
Excellent, thank you. In the meantime, we have the results, I believe, from our poll questions. Saket, could you maybe put those on the screen? Thank you so much. So the results of the first question, which was about proactive security strategies, right? So we're saying that there's an evolution from reactive to proactive. We've asked the audience, where would you rate yourselves? From fully reactive, so zero, proactiveness, basically. Second option was some monitoring but limited automation. Third one was starting to implement AI and analytics, and the last and final one was, of course, we're fully mature, secure operations, all done. That's quite interesting because we're seeing the majority of the respondents saying that there's some monitoring but limited automation. So the number 2 was the main answer, followed by some people saying we're still very immature, fully reactive, but also almost a quarter of the people saying we are implementing AI and analytics. Is that something that you see in the field as well, Christian? Is there a tendency towards monitoring and even deploying AI and analytics in OT security environments?
I would say yes. And the main reason for this is when you really optimize your SOC and your monitoring capabilities, then most of the vendors that provide SIEM SOAR solutions use AI technologies. And when you build up a modern SOC right now, then it's also a must-have. Yeah, you have to use AI technologies to be efficient, to optimize all the monkey work that especially the level 1 analysts are doing all the day. Otherwise, you're not efficient. This is my understanding, the main reason for this AI and analytics stuff. When we look to the limited automation, this is also an interesting topic in OT. I think when you have a look to a typical OT incident, and then of course we have these phishing ransomware stuff, but we have also these targeted attacks. And one of the key topics that we see is a big lack of resources, especially in the monitoring, that have a deep understanding what does an attack in OT really mean. You could also have some protocol-based attacks, and so you have to have this understanding what does this command in a protocol really does at the end. Yeah, and this is the reason why the monitoring is done in some cases, but when you really talk about automation, I would say that there is a bit a fear of automation in OT. Of course, something could happen that the production side does not work anymore. And this fear is higher than really seeing the efficiency. What can we do to be better protected in a more proactive way? This is also a very interesting discussion that we have in customer conversations.
Yes, and there's the 4 eyes principle, of course. You don't want to bring the plant down by automation going haywire, right? So that's kind of what you're saying now, which is completely understandable. I mean, the uptime of the factory, for example, is still the most important thing, right? For most of our clients. So completely understandable.
Yeah.
So thank you for that input. The other question we asked is which technologies are you currently leveraging or planning to adopt for OT threat detection, right? Because we're talking about threat detection here as well, of course. when we call it managed extended detection and response at NTT. So, and including IT, but also OT into an overall managed detection and response strategy. So in terms of the technologies, we have a fairly balanced response. So about one fifth says AI and ML powered analytics, about a fifth says zero trust. Managed SOC services are slightly more prevalent, over 20%, and then threat intel platforms. And then interestingly, 8% says none of the above, right? Which means that they haven't looked at any of those four technologies. I think those people would also have put themselves in the low maturity answer, when one of the previous poll questions, I guess. So maybe a question for Daniele. If you look at, we discussed zero trust, right? But in terms of threat intelligence platforms, there are some specific threats in the OT security landscape that only pertain to that, I would say, use case from a cyber criminal perspective. Is there room for specific threat intel platforms, or would you say that that should be part of an overall TI threat intelligence effort for the enterprise, having both IT and OT environments? What's your take on that one, Daniel?
So I think there's a room for dedicated threat intelligence platform, and I will explain why. Because majority of the attack are performed through, let's call it OT legit protocol. So usually what they do, they encapsulate other traffic into NP3 protocol, for example. So in detecting these protocols, understand what's the behavior, what's happening is one of the key things. So understand what's happening at that level. So which is somehow hidden to traditional threat intelligence platform. The other element is important is understand what's happening in the environment. So moving into a deception capabilities now is a must-have, because we need to understand what is the skill set of the attacker. Because we have so many tools, so many scripts that anyone, really, and literally anyone can leverage to perform an attack. So integrating, deception capability, threat intelligence are the two, let's say, main channel to create your picture of the threats into your organization.
Yeah, excellent. We have the same perspective there. Now, I have to talk about AI and machine learning, right? You cannot do a webinar without at least, having one topic there around AI and machine learning. So, Christian, how do you see AI and machine learning changing the OT security landscape, if at all, right? And could you maybe give specific examples of what you've seen in the field? And I'll let Daniele comment, because you have, of course, also an interesting angle into this. Let's start with Christian. What's your take on the biggest hype of the decade, which is AI and machine learning?
I think when you have a look to all the products that we see in cybersecurity for OT, and it starts with getting visibility, also with all the analytics stuff, then each and every vendor puts something like AI and machine learning into the products. And the main reason is that if you have a very static algorithm for detection, this does not work anymore. You need advanced capabilities within the products, and this is a must-have. And you can have a look, for example, when you evaluate tools for getting visibility, like the Zomi Clarity guys, for example, then they have it already in place, and they are able to detect all the assets also in a very detailed way. And then when you go to something else like the advanced analytics platforms, it's the same. And what are the typical use cases that you have in cybersecurity operation and AI? The first thing is being more efficient. When we, for example, talk about the threat intel platforms, you need to enrich all the data. You get a bunch of data, then you have to double check. Are the assets, for example, do they have some vulnerabilities? Are the vulnerabilities actively used? Do we get some alerts in the last couple of hours for these dedicated attacks, for example, and so on and so on. There are many things you have to do manually. And if you combine this with an AI capability, you can increase the complete efficiency level to a stage where you, for example, can also optimize the number of people that you have in the SOC analyst level 1. Yeah, and I think this is the main topic that we see. The same as when you talk about what are typical advanced threat detection capabilities. In this case, I think that many vendors are at the beginning. Yeah, some have some detection capabilities for dedicated use cases. For example, for phishing, it works quite well to analyze what are typical phishing emails that you get. But for many other typical use cases, I would say that we have a very big development right now in place on the vendor side to improve these capabilities. So that my understanding, in the next 12 months, AI detection will be a commodity feature in all of these tools, and you have to use it. Otherwise, you are always too slow.
Yeah. So Fortinet has been investing heavily in leveraging AI and machine learning in the past couple of years. Daniele, could you share with the audience a specific example of where AI actually makes a difference in terms of improving your OT security posture, powered by the Fortinet platform, obviously?
Yes, so let's clarify something. So we invest heavily. So we have three main core capabilities, which are in Fortinet, in which we invest remarkably a large amount of funds. One is our FortiFabric, one is our ASIC, so our own CPU, and one is AI. So in terms of AI, we are really accelerating anything is related to orchestration and automation, because one of the key challenges for, as Christian said, for the different area of the security operation is to manage this large amount of unstructured data. So and this is where we are investing massively. So we are facilitating, and actually the platform is already out with the latest version of the security fabric. We are continuously enhancing our AI in the orchestration automation area, which is absolutely important if we look at the efficiency, always the efficiency concept in the OT space, and we keep developing this area. So we keep just to give you an example of our involvement in that area. Just the past year we recorded 500 patents in AI. So just to tell you how massive we are investing into that area, we believe that will facilitate and enhance the detection and response capability in the OT space.
Thank you for sharing that. We are on the entity side. We're also heavily investing in AI, of course, and we are also submitting lots of patents. So I think we're both aligned in terms of being very innovative when it comes to applying AI to improve cybersecurity posture in general, but also specifically in OT security environments. So thank you for sharing that with us, Daniele. Let me switch gears again and move to the third theme of the webinar, which is about future-proofing your security framework. So we'll talk about recommendations for enhancing that convergence and integration. We'll talk about adapting architectures. What do you do specifically to be more agile, more proactive? And finally, we'll also be addressing some common misconceptions in terms of planning for future threats, right? So on the poll that you hopefully see on the screen now, and these are, again, single choice questions, we're asking you to give your input on two topics there. What's the biggest barrier to fully integrating IT and OT systems? So is it the legacy infrastructure? Is it organizational resistance, security concerns, lack of skill, talent, or budget constraints? So if you could pick one of those options, please. And the second question that we'd like to have your perspective on is, how confident are you that your current security architecture can support AI-driven business transformation? So we've been talking about this AI-driven transformation. Do you think it's really going to happen? Are you a bit skeptical, or are you saying, I don't think this will make a difference, I'll just stick to what I have in terms of human-controlled processes and 4IS principles and double checks, and we'll do everything manually because I'm not going to have a bot running my OT security, and when it starts hallucinating, it takes down the plant, right? So give your input there on those two questions, and while we wait for the responses, maybe one for Christian. When we talk about future proofing, what's one critical area that most organizations overlook when they are integrating OT and IT? What's your take on that, Christian?
think when we talk about the really the integration IT and OT, I think we already discussed the topic that setting up a proper organizational structure. This is the key topic. Yeah. And the same as when we talk about what is the target operating model for the operation of these converged environments. And I know definitely would suggest to focus on these things that you are really prepared in a way that you know what do I do with all these environments, with all these technologies, with all these systems that you can put in place when we talk about OT security. And I'll just give you an example. For example, when we remember the questions that were asked, and the one answer was that there's a lack of visibility in these networks. And it is a typical thing that we also see, especially in legacy infrastructure. And when you put some technologies and network to get this visibility, then normally what is the result? You know, I have tons of assets, I have 10 times more vulnerabilities, and I have thousands of risks that are popping up. And the typical question is, what should I do now?
Yeah, how do you prioritize, right? That's a key challenge.
Exactly. How to prioritize. And on the other hand, we have also seen projects that the customers wants to have these solutions, and then they have this information, and the project was finished.
Yeah.
And I say, no, it's not finished. Now it is starting, because now you have to get rid of all these risks. And this is a topic where the companies has to be prepared of. And you mentioned what to prioritize. I think this is also a typical topic that you identify what are typical exposed hosts, what are the real critical assets for my business process, where do I have production lines maybe that are doubled in a factory where you can say, okay, the risk is a bit lower if only a single asset is affected and so on. And these are the things that always rely on a target operating model for cybersecurity. And this is key topic from my perspective.
Yeah, I fully concur, and I think one CISO friend of mine once said, if you solve two problems, patching everything you should be patching and having MFA multi-factor authentication, you solve 80% of your exposure, right? So, Daniele, would you first of all concur with that statement, and does it apply to OT security? Would be my first question. Second question.
I agree.
Yeah, well, I think everybody.
I agree. But this is the kind of discussion we are having. So what I'm recording is really exactly what Christian explained very clearly. It's also one of the key challenges actually we are trying to resolve together, CISOs and CIOs, is that innovating, as we were saying at the beginning, is quite difficult because investing amortization of the cost in innovation cannot be easily reflected into the production environment because it has to be reflected in the final goods. And so developing this concept, as we were saying, of incubating helps enormously the organizations. And one of these, just to tell you a use case, one of the use cases I'm personally following is related exactly to patching. So because you cannot switch off a refinery, okay? So how we manage, the patching while maintaining the operation on. So
this
and
is 24/7 processes, right? Refinery keeps running. So you have to patch the plane while in flight is basically the challenge.
And this is what is that's the reason why we are developing this incubator of virtual patching. So enabling the team to patch somehow at the network level, just to give you a little bit of the flavor, while the teams works on limiting the threats and eradicating. So this is the kind of concept we are developing. Also because there's another important topic that is somehow underestimated. So switching off a refinery, it's difficult. But trust me, switching on back is really more difficult. So, and this is why we are developing this kind of concept. So it's important that we really move into this mindset and develop this kind of collaboration with a technology like us and a consultancy company like Entity. So because this is the path to really respond to this kind of huge business challenges.
Yep.
Thank you, Daniele. So, Kat, could we get the results of the poll, please, on the screen if possible? Thank you so much. So on the first question, which was about future-proofing the security framework, it seems that about 40% of the respondents are saying that the biggest barrier to fully integrating IT and OT systems is organizational resistance or silos. We've already talked about silos. It keeps reappearing. Apparently, IT and OT are not yet fully aligned, right, in the field when it comes to working together and starting to have a common understanding and action plan about jointly improving the cybersecurity posture of their organization. So, Christian, are you seeing that in our client base as well? Because you also do some consulting work, of course. Is that still, difficult to put IT and OT teams together and have them jointly agreeing on a joint strategy and an execution plan?
Definitely, definitely. I think the future main goal should be that IT and OT should be best friends. And on the one hand side, the IT guys should really support the OT guys in a way that it works for them. And on the other hand, the OT guys should be a bit more open-minded. Yeah, because what we, for example, see is that in OT, the trust to the OT vendors is higher than to IT. And this is good in some cases, but it's also bad in some cases. And just give you an example, when you have a look to the network layer and have a look to the Fortinet portfolio and all the firewall and switching technologies, then you have state-of-the-art technology where you can definitely say, if there's a critical asset, I want to do a microsegmentation, switch it on, done. Yeah. When you have a look to reality, then in many cases, the switching infrastructure, for example, is used from the OT vendors, and they use many things that no IT guy would ever touch. Yeah, of course, it's based on minimal requirements. And the trust level between IT and OT is not on the baseline that you can say the OT guys trust IT to use these IT equipment. They say, no, let's use these other things that you find on the market. And then they are very restricted and limited. I think this is a pretty good example where both sides could learn from each other. On the one hand side, that OT trusts more IT, but IT also, and this is a must do, have to build up an understanding. Why do they need this? Why do they limited the requirements or why they limited the number of products, for example, that can be used. Of course, the OT guys have also a lot of pressure from the OT vendors. They just say, this is the only thing that is allowed. If you put something else in network, we do not do a guarantee that everything is up and running. And this is also not the way it works. And so everybody should work together to be more powerful against the OT vendors and to build up also a proactive security at the end.
That's a great recommendation. Daniel, any recommendation from your side? How can we break down those barriers, those silos between IT and OT security teams?
Okay, I can tell you something based on personal experience because I've been a CISO for almost 12 years. So I've been dealing with that problem many times. So one of the root causes was that my SOC team, so IT team, is really vertical. So they're really verticalized. So that's the reason why, as Christian was saying, they're looking at the cutting edge technology. So the latest, or looking at the bandwidth, or looking at, while in the OT, my OT operational team was horizontal. So they look at as I said, the efficiency end to end, and they jump from an area to another to guarantee efficiency and that the manufacturing, the plant or the production line is up and running. So the key topic is to bring together these two different perspectives. And this will probably, I think, at least in my case, solve part of the problem. So educating the OT team in be more vertical in certain area, also organize, make the organization in the OT space that it tends to be more vertical, and also teach to the IT team to be more horizontal. So it's good that you are, expert maybe, I don't know, in network detection, for example, or network security, but it's also good to widen a little bit the area. But because also this is shifted by AI as well. So AI, one of the big shift is that So is that who's capable to be more agile in moving across the different domains will succeed. And this is what we should teach to our security teams. And this was the direction I was taking at the time. And I have to say it worked out. So just to tell you a little bit based on the experience, and I still believe in this model. So we need to be more agile in shifting and reduce a little bit of the verticalization.
Thank you. That's a great recommendation, Daniele. Now, entity data and entity group, for that matter, and Fortinet have been working jointly on some value propositions and some joint solutions. Saket, can you please publish the link to our services site? Thank you. That's very fast on the chat. So if you click that link, dear attendees, you will find a lot more on what we've built. We didn't want to talk about the details here in terms of architectures and product lines, but there is a lot of additional information that you'll find there. If you'd like to connect with an expert, Christian, Daniele, or anyone of our joint teams, and we both have large OT security teams, of course, both on the NTT and the Fortinet side, we will happily assist you with any questions that you may have, whether it's on OT security specifically or even a broader IT OT convergence discussion, or even things like consolidation, cloud, and many other topics. What you need to know is that Fortinet is one of the leading global cybersecurity vendors in this industry, and that NTT is one of the largest cybersecurity solution integrators and managed service providers. So I think we're both very well positioned to help our audience with any questions pertaining to OT security. So have a look at this link. It has a lot of very interesting additional information. So we're getting closer to the end of this webinar. So we'll end with the last question here, starting with Christian. Christian, if you had one piece of advice to a security leader preparing for the next 5 years, an OT security leader, just to be specific, because that's the audience we have on the call today, one piece of advice, only one, which is hard for a consultant, I know. What would that be?
Okay, that's not easy to answer, but if I'm limited to one, I would recommend switch to a proactive cybersecurity strategy. This would be my advice, because all the reactive things that we built up in the last couple of years are not bad, but you're always too late.
Yeah.
And the attackers will be more efficient in the next couple of years. They will be more advanced. They will be faster. And that's your main challenge. And the only way to fix it is be proactive.
Thank you so much. Vielen Dank. Daniele, same question. One single piece of advice for an OT security leader preparing for the next 5 years. What would that one single piece of advice would be?
Learn to channel innovation, because regulatory landscape and threat landscape are putting a huge pressure on companies and CISOs. So it's important to look forward in order to prepare a small subset and then scale up. So the big brand approach doesn't work anymore. So we need, especially in OT, we need to shift this mindset into that direction. So innovate, be prepared to innovate. So start small and scale up.
Grazie mille. Thank you, Daniele. Thank you, Christian, for your excellent contribution. It's always a joy to speak to subject matter experts. I think our audience has learned a lot today. And the poll questions also give an indication of where is the landscape? Where are people going? How mature do they think they are, etc. So I thought this was a very interesting get together. Once more, I'd like to thank Fortinet for working with NTT and attending this webinar, of course, and Christian, and also the team that has organized this webinar. There's a lot of people behind this that are not visible. So thank you, everyone. Looking forward to seeing you in the field in the future. And I would say stay secure, especially in your OT environment. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.